Welcome to episode 3 of Printing Pressed. I'm Will, and behind me is a sleeping Candy. In this episode, we're going to go over some quick revisions to my query letter. We're going to go through online resources to help authors find agents, and then I'll show how I organize a spreadsheet to keep track of the agents I want to query. First off, how am I feeling? This week was a bit more of a roller coaster ride. There's ups, there's downs, a few loops. I mentioned in a prior episode that I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I think that ramped up this week. Even within a specific genre like fantasy, there are a lot of agents. It's a huge task to go through them all. It was also challenging worrying about, am I going to impress these agents? Are they even going to give me a chance? Would they ever read my book? One thing that helped me is a tool my therapist shared with me, reframing. An agent is supposed to work for me. It may feel like right now they have all the power and I'm on my hands and knees begging for an opportunity, but at the end of the day, it should be a mutually beneficial arrangement. So that helped me feel a lot better about the process. I was able to enjoy it a bit more. It was still tedious, don't get me wrong, but it took some of the power away from feeling so vulnerable. Now a quick random detail about me. I used to be an avid boulderer. It was a wonderful combination of physical exercise and problem solving. Unfortunately, I badly injured my knee. I tore a meniscus. And I waited a few years to do anything about it because I was on the edge of surgery. But earlier this year in March, I completely lost the ability to walk. Fortunately, I found a great surgeon and got the treatment I needed. It was a long recovery process and I'm still in physical therapy, but I can play basketball again, I can ride my bike. I haven't really ran that much on concrete, but I can. I'm getting there, building back up. All right, back to the task at hand, finding a literary agent. First, I want to go over a few terms I ran into. MSWL. That stands for Manuscript Wishlist, and it's a tremendous tool to see if an agent is right for you. They'll detail what kind of books they're looking for, what kind of genres they represent, and provide comps that you can compare your manuscript to. I also ran into magical realism. How is that different from fantasy? Magical realism is much more grounded than fantasy. It can have fantastical elements, but it's generally a story set in our world with magical elements. Another term I ran into is BIPOC. I've seen it before, but I think it's worth defining in this context. It stands for Black Indigenous Person of Color. Obviously, I look like this. My experience in the world and the publishing industry is going to be very different than the reality for others. Bear with me, this isn't going somewhere terrible. I did, however, come across a few agents who explicitly said that they would only represent BIPOC or LGBTQ authors. Obviously, there's plenty of historical inequity, and I can understand wanting to balance the scales. This chart shows how there's still a lot of work to be done to create equal opportunity for everyone. It's important for me to respect these agents' preferences and not waste their time by querying them. I also think it's worth mentioning that agents are essentially salespeople. And once again, using that reframing technique, rather than take things personally, I can think of this as pitching to someone who's trying to do business. And before we go through some of the tools available to find agents, let's quickly look at revisions to my query letter. I might disappear here. I think it's better to have a side-by-side. Beyond a few punctuation and grammatical changes, the highlighted text marks the major alterations. The reason I changed brutal colonizers, terrifying monsters, and indigenous groups into rampaging knights, subterranean tengu, and indigenous warriors whose tattoos magically come to life is because it adds a lot more of the color of my novel. It's not as vague. The next change was to one of my comps. I finally read Robin Hobb's Live Ship Traders and loved it. And while the setting of A Song of Ice and Fire is a closer match to my story, Live Ship Traders has a lot more magic in it and bizarre creatures. It's also less ubiquitous as a title. And in a bit of strategic insight, I noticed almost every agent was a woman, so I thought it might make sense to include at least one female author in my comps. The second to last change I made was I moved my word count down to the bottom. I got the sense that agents and publishers are a little wary of long novels, so I didn't want a number at the top of my query to stop someone dead in their tracks. The final change was just simplifying my close. There was no reason to add as opposed to words. It's kind of a negative statement. I'm telling stories through audio. Done. Period. Come on in, Tammy. Hey. What a good girl. So how do we find a literary agent? The first thing I did was Google that. Finding a literary agent. I found Stephen Erickson's agent, Murakami's agent, and I also stumbled across Catherine Cho, who made it to the top of my list. One of the first websites I tried was Poets and Writers, pw.org. Under the Publish Your Writing menu, you can find literary agents. I did quickly run into a problem, though. There's no fantasy. There's speculative fiction, serialized fiction, magical realism, cross-genre, which does apply to my book. All in all, I found that kind of insulting. So after searching with magical realism chosen, here are some results. I found a few agents here, but quickly realized this was not the right tool for me. The main website I used was the Association of American Literary Agents, aalitagents.org. Clicking the Find an Agent tab You can search by name or by category. Hold on, I'm going to feed Tambi. Here they actually had a fantasy section, so I clicked that and got a long, long list of agents. Here's where that overwhelming feeling kicked in. I checked every agent on this list because as a Will, in elementary school, I was always last in line unless there was a Zach or a Zoe. So I wanted to give everyone equal opportunity. After spending hours vetting and adding these names to my spreadsheet, I found that listening to music really helped the experience. So what does it look like while using this site? Each agent provides a description, often provides a website, and will say whether they're open or closed. So if I wanted to know more information about this agent, I can go to their website, I can take a look at their team, and I can check what they're looking for. Already the start of her blurb has my attention. And expanding the information, I also saw this. I noticed that some of the entries had broken web links. You can get around that by copying this information and then Googling it. Hi, Tambi. What a sweet girl. I found it was also worth double checking whether the agent said they were closed on their website. Some of the downsides I found with this website is that it didn't list the total number of agents. It was just one long page. That made it easy to search, but having a total tally would have been nice. It was also difficult to find who these agents actually represented. Many of the agency websites compiled all their authors in one big list. Checking author by author is not very time efficient. Next up is the Read See blog. Navigating to the literary agent page, you can select genre, and you get this nice detailed list. It also shows exactly how many agents were found. The only downside is they're separated across different pages, so it's hard to search all of them at once. But maybe I missed something about the site. It's also unclear how they're organized. It doesn't seem to be alphabetical, so why am I seeing these agents in this order? Had I not used the prior site, I might have preferred this one. The accessibility of information is quite nice. I tried to use agentquery.com, and there was way too many pop-ups. I understand you need to make money, but this is not very user-friendly. One site I didn't use but heard glowing reviews about was Publishers Marketplace. This is a paid service. You can do a $10 24-hour trial, or you can do a $25 a month membership. I think if you're serious about writing, $25 is not too much to invest in your career. If I hear back from agents, I might sign up on this site to better vet them. The final site I want to mention is Query Tracker. This is the main one for submissions. It's also a good tool for finding an agent. The only downside is you have to click on each name before you get any information about them, beyond their agency, of course. But in terms of submissions, this is a site you have to use. Many agents only accept submissions through Query Tracker. So how did I organize all these agents I was interested in? I created a spreadsheet. There's probably better ways to organize this, but I have a column for names, company, who they represent, highlights of why I chose them, instructions for submissions, personalizable notes, when I submitted, what the response was, my impression of them. As you can see, some of the names are highlighted in green, some in yellow, and some in red. This was just my own opinion. Green represents a top choice for me. With yellow, I'm very interested, but I'm going to wait until I apply to the agents I've marked green. Red, I'm less sure about, or they're not currently open to submissions. Personally, I found the tedious process of creating the spreadsheet and organizing that information really helped me understand the process as a whole. It might not be the best use of your time, especially if you have a busy career, but getting into the nuts and bolts of it bolstered my sense of what I'm looking for and what I need an agent to bring to the table. Before we go, I want to bring attention to an amazing resource, Query Shark. Special thanks to my friend Autumn Kraus for recommending this site and for promoting my channel on her Instagram. I should have read through this endlessly while writing my query letter, and this helped me with some of my revisions. Unfortunately, it's not accepting new entries because the creator, Janet Reed, passed away earlier this year, but I appreciate her contribution to the literary community. Her insight was incredible, and I think it's worth going through the archive. Now that you're buried in information about agents, how do you submit to them? How do you personalize a message to attract the agent of your dreams? Find out next time.